Notice that this meeting has been provided to the Hopewell Valley News, the Times of Trenton, and the Trentonian, posted on the borough website in compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act. Do a flag salute, please. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with justice for all.
Mayor Kennedy.
Here.
Mr. Buda.
Here.
Ms. Baxter.
Here.
Mr. Donaldson.
Here.
Ms. Lyons.
Here.
Ms. Perry. Mr. Young.
Here.
Ms. Coella. Here. And Vice Chairman Mr.
Here. Okay, so first we have the approval of the minutes from the June 10th meeting. Is there a motion to approve or questions or comments?
I'll motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Abstained.
Abstained. This Susanna has. Okay. Then we have approval of vouchers. We're up to 21. Is that the most recent, Susanna?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so the 21, put them all in one
I'll move.
batch. Motion. Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So next, we're just gonna change the agenda a little bit to convenience the public. We have 2 certificates of appropriateness. We're gonna bump up the public comment before that. For discussions of any items not on the agenda. Anybody, or items not on.
Hi, I'm Susan Flora. This is a question about process. In the last planning board meeting, Mary Lou read something that encouraged the public to really educate ourselves about the process. So I have a few questions about that, if that's okay. Great, thanks. So during the process of the hearings for 57 Hamilton, we learned that people speaking on behalf of the applicant could give the planning board materials that day, like at the planning board. And so I would question that because it seemed like those are important documents that people should have time to read first. And so I went to the council and I asked about that process. And Ryan informed us that there is no process here in Hopewell, but like in other communities, there is process. And in Princeton, for example, you don't have to submit documents X number of days before the meeting. So I understand that, and I understand that Ryan said that this is actually something for the planning board to work on with the secretary to decide whether it's just going to be something that the secretary decides or if it should be an actual ordinance. So I understand that and I've learned that. The next question I have is, we can broaden this out, that when an expert witness provides testimony and then submits to the attorney a large document and report at one planning board meeting, when does that get disseminated to the planning board? What is the process for that, the timeliness of that, for the planning board to then educate themselves? Because it's my understanding that expert testimony that was given at one planning board meeting with a large report submitted as evidence was not distributed to the planning board until late in the afternoon on the next planning board. So the likelihood of the planning board having time to actually read and consider that diminished. So I would like to understand what the legal process is, what the process that isn't written down but is practiced in Hopewell, what is that? So that people who are trying to educate themselves and trying to communicate effectively to the board can do so, so that you all can make a well-informed decision using your own personal professional experiences, the information that you've been given from your experts that we pay, taxpayers pay, from people who are submitting the application, but also people who are trying to share alternative perspectives. So what is the process?
Would you like me to?
Yes, please.
So, in the normal course, you would have an application filed And as part of that, there's a checklist of items that the applicant goes through. It includes certain reports and studies and application forms. They go through that list. So the applicant's materials are usually put on or submitted prior to the hearing. And then the next phase is that the staff goes through and reviews and puts their reports together.
So the staff in this case is
Would be the borough engineer, borough planner, borough traffic
based
expert,
on the submission.
based on the
Mhm.
submission. And then at the hearing, a lot of times hearings, take place in one night, they can go multiple nights, depending on the application. Typically, what would happen is that, if somebody, the applicant has the ability to put on its proofs and.
Right,
its
which we
cases,
saw, yeah, they
and-
handed it out, right?
And they're required to have the plans in, which they did 10 days before, but they could bring exhibits
Mhm.
and, help explain, like, so for example.
Right, I understand the
Yeah,
exhibits
If they, and a lot of times they address the comments in the reports, because
okay,
they get reports sometimes a week
right,
before.
and I think you're not understanding my
Oh, no, I'm
question.
getting to it, I'm just giving
Okay.
you the full picture.
Mhm.
And then when you get, then after that, any objectors that want to bring their own professionals in, would have the opportunity to present their case after the applicant's case.
Yeah.
So you would bring your experts in, those experts, would testify. If they have some background information, they could provide that and reviewed
Yes, so that is my question, when that
during the
additional
testimony.
information is given, when then do you distribute it to the planning board so they can actually read it?
Yeah, like all exhibits, it would be that night.
So that is not what happened in this case.
They had testimony about it, so so in other words,
So,
there's never a physical presentation to the board. It's on an exhibit or a sheet that's
So-
shown.
so if the exhibit was given to you, this report is an exhibit,
Mhm. It's
when is
marked into
that?
the evidence and becomes part of the record.
But
That's it.
so, that's it, so there is
That's it.
so no one from the planning board ever has to
And
see
if they
it.
wanna review it and read through it, they're welcome to.
Oh, but
But
that's not something that the secretary actually does.
it's not basically,
Does that
like
seem
all
right to you?
exhibits, it's what the process is, like
Is
all
that the
exhibits.
law, or is that what Hopewell process is?
That's the process. That's what you do. So you mark exhibits into evidence.
Mhm.
They become part of the record. The board deliberates on it. They could review it. They could go through it.
But if they
want.
don't have
if they-
access to it, how do they?
Oh, I'm
review it?
talking physically here. So like, in other words, if it's a board, there's no report, they can go over to the board and take a look at it. Or they could just look at it in connection with the testimony.
Okay, so to educate the public, so if ever there is an expert witness, they should come in with enough copies that night and give a 20-page report to the planning board that night.
Yeah.
As opposed to giving it to you or the secretary with the understanding that everything would be distributed. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, that is not documented anywhere, that was not explained during the process anywhere, so thank you for taking the time. That's great.
Yes.
Hi, Henry Whitman, I'm the lumberyard redevelopment. Just kind of wanna get you an update of where we stand on, or, kind of like lack of progress. I don't know,
Did you say a lack of progress on what?
on getting the roof and plan sign.
Oh, okay.
So, but I'm gonna give you,
Give us-
if I can, if you bear, I'll give you a thumbnail history of it, sure. Been 10 years in the works, 2016, town approached me, wanted to be in the development. I came up with a draft plan, met with the planning board, we came to an agreement what was appropriate. Your planner presented to the planning board, you approved it, became an ordinance when it went to the town. Anyway, that took place between 2016 and 2018. In between 2018, 2022, I submitted detailed plans for basically the buildings and everything were already laid out, and the roads and all that as part of the redevelopment plan. In 2022, that was when the planning board approved the actual plan. What then encompassed was my engineer put together the stormwater plan, you know, the utilities, the details, the landscape, you know, specified about traffic and all this stuff. At that time, there were different engineers, it was, Farrar, I think, at that time. Anyway, the resolution was signed in September of 22. In October of 22, my engineer submitted an engineering report in response to the comments that were made at the meeting. And that was under Farrar. We never received a response to that, unfortunately. My engineer said, well, maybe they're just waiting for the DNR Canal Commission Stormwater Management Review and the Mercer County Soils Review. So in the next, unfortunately, the watershed wasn't able to follow through with the plan. It was a green plan. They, I don't know, whatever, long story, but I had to change and get a different stormwater engineer, hired a guy in Princeton. They put together the plans. It was 40,000 and 150 pages for a 1 acre lot of money. But I did meet the threshold where it was a major stormwater plan, even though it was a small site. Anyway, we did that, submitted to DNR. It cost me like $2,000, and they spent about 6 weeks reviewing it. They approved it with some changes that my engineers dealt with. That plan also went up to Mercer County Soils. Apparently they have experts on, they wanted to see the stormwater plan also. They reviewed the calculations, went through it, and they approved it. All that was delivered to Boswell Engineering at this point on July 24th of 2024. So 2 years ago. Anyway, since that date, they tried to introduce themselves. Mr. Bright was not available. We did get a 10-page letter in October of 24. Asked for a lot of things that had been done, some minor things, you know. My engineers kind of thought it was a little ridiculous, but in any case, I didn't want to fight City Hall. I asked my engineers, let's address these items. They did, you know, a couple of revisions of the plan was submitted. Didn't get any responses. Went to the mayor a couple of times. Eventually, Mr. Brightly agreed to a telephone conference. That was April 11th. So now from July of 24 to April 11th of 25, other than one letter in between that nobody could talk to him about, that was the first time Mr. Brightly made himself available just to talk on the phone. Anyway, understand my frustration. As a result of that conversation, my engineers went back and redrafted the plan again, charging but formally. Went through that process. We submitted a revised plan on November 28th of 25. So now, well, that was just before Christmas last year. That was submitted. No response. The only response I actually got is I got a bill in February for $5,000. I think it was for engineering review. No reports, no emails, no contact, nothing. Couldn't get a hold of, I attempted to make several calls to Candace, because she was a new engineer. No response, went to the mayor. She was kind enough after that call to meet with me in person on May 28th of this year. So I went in, very pleasant meeting. I think we had a very good rapport, you know, I'm just trying to get to the bottom of this thing, get it signed off. Anyway, she followed up with an email to make this. Some things, I provided those documents, said there was gonna be technical comments from engineers, they never got them. I had made notes during that meeting, you know, I'm a builder, I've been around a while, it wasn't real difficult stuff, you know, some things about how deep is the storm, stuff like that. I'm not an engineer, but in any case, I responded to them, a lot of these things could be dealt with, if you know what an as-built plan is basically when no plan is perfect, I don't care what you build. You build, you get on site, you find things change, maybe it works a little better. The engineers are involved, there's their inspections, there's a pre-construction meeting, there's ones, whatever steps they want to be there. And you adjust these things, and when you're done, they actually go out and say, okay, this is where the grade ended up, so deep the storm ponds should be, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, I got short email that said, I responded, I copied my engineers on, I copied Candace on. We've got no response. I called Ryan again, a couple of phone calls this month, emails. The first response I got was when I sat here tonight to speak to the engineer briefly. The problem I'm running into now is we want to pave the road, and model elements included. I need to make street cuts. I get stormwater, the whole bit. the water people are actually renting my yard to park their trucks, so they can, it would be nice to like have them do the water connection. If I don't get that soon, it's gonna take a little while to get from there. We have the plans, and my engineer, all three of them, different engineers, different companies for different functions. They all tell me the plan would beat any other place, it addresses all the serious things. The things that were being requested now are pretty minor, things can be dealt with very easily on an as-built, through the inspections or whatever. If I don't get it signed pretty soon, we're gonna run out of the fall weather. I can't do it in the winter, and next year you're on the pave, and I can't, there's more time on the road. This is done. This has been 4 years since the planning board meeting, and it's just, you signed a redeveloper agreement with me in 22. And you said you would expedite this and help with this. It's not happening because of the engineer. I hate to do that to the engineer, I did tell her I was gonna do that tonight, but. Anyway, that's my frustration, I want you to know that, I hope something can happen, it's a good project. Everybody in town wants it that I know of, people a mile out and want it, I think you all want it, there might be one objection, but in any case, I think it's a popular project. Please, let's get this thing signed this month. Anyway, any questions?
No questions, but obviously this is not how we want things to work for people who literally have done something that they contracted with us to do, so.
What is the
I
next
accept
step?
your
What's the
That's
next step?
my question.
Maybe, Chris, can you just remind everyone, and unfortunately, there's a lot of frustration here on, I'll just say on both sides of this table. But maybe if you could just address, unfortunately, these are not things that the board can, these are not board matters, so maybe just remind us all on the side of the table. What happens in compliance and what
Yeah,
things
so-
we could perhaps do, or the town could do.
Yeah, and, so I'm not familiar with all the facts on this because it's gone back and forth, so I can't comment as to the status and where things are and what's happening, but from a global standpoint, as you know, we adopt a resolution of approval. After that, the next step is for the applicant to submit revised documents in terms of what the approval required. So the approval said your 4-foot sidewalk has to be 6 feet. They have to update the plans. If it says you have a developer's agreement, you have to do the developer's agreement, you have to post the escrow, you gotta get all the outside agency approvals. And that process basically goes to staff, and they go through two things. They go through the reports that identify deficiencies and items that were not addressed or needed to be addressed, where the board said as part of the approval, address them. And then you go through all of the conditions. So you go to condition 1, you go to condition 2, you go to condition 3, and make sure everything is satisfied. Once all the outside agency approvals, once all the conditions are satisfied, there are certain conditions that occur after development, so I'm not including those. There are very few. A lot of them occur before. Like, for example, there may be a test, the lighting. You can't do that before it's actually constructed. So after construction, that condition is something that occurs afterwards. But there are a few of those conditions. So once all those conditions are satisfied, the plan is finalized, that plan gets signed. And then it becomes the approved plan. That plan goes to the building department because planning and zoning has signed off. And now they could pull construction permits, grading permits, whatever they need to actually do that. If there's a deviation from what's being proposed, sometimes there's a minor deviation. You find a utility line underground that no one knew about, so you have to move your pipe 6 inches. That's usually a field change, it's documented and those things go on. If it's a substantial change, then the applicant has to come back before the board and get an amended plan. That's the big picture. How it relates to this, I'm not sure, because I haven't really paid attention to all the facts and where things are, so I can't comment on that, but that's the big picture of the process.
Does anyone understand why the plans haven't been approved and signed? I mean, I don't know, and I'm just asking that question.
I don't know, anybody on the side of the table could know that, you know.
I don't know either.
But do we have an extra obligation because this was a redevelopment area, and the redevelopment with the redeveloper's agreement? Are there extra things that we can do to?
Well, with the redevelopment, there are the redevelopment agreements with firms that are requirements for both sides, and that needs to be complied with.
And is
but
it like a
again, the
slot
site-
for redevelopers agreement?
Maybe, maybe not. I mean, it depends on how it's structured and what periods are provided, but if there's a hang up or a delay with compliance sign off, you need to figure out what that is, what condition hasn't been satisfied, or if it has been satisfied, has it been officially documented so that during our professionals can review and say, yes, it is satisfied, you know?
I
So,
think,
yeah.
I'm sorry, I think where the disconnect is, Boswell Engineering was not the engineer at the time of the plan, board. None of the previous stuff. I mean, there was some holdover, just, borough merge, but they don't have a transcript. They didn't hear any meetings, any testimony. They don't know what happened. And they're the ones who are trying to see if we comply with what happened at those meetings. And they obviously will look at the other statutes, see if something there. And I think that's the disconnect, is what we have knows, every time I get an engineer, Mr. Brightly had gave me a long list. Now I'm doing with Candace, I think I'm about to get another list. Things keep changing, it's engineering, it's your planning board approval. My guys have matched, my engineer was here, he's still engineer was here. He did what you asked, and we submitted it when it was last engineer. I don't know what happened to it. Anyway, a lot of those things that are coming up are just new creations. Some things they asked for had already been done or on the plan. A real simple example. There's a separation of buildings on the front of the street. There's like 3 and 2 unit building. I couldn't bring a garbage truck on site because you didn't want a garbage truck on a private road. Fine. You want the cans on the street. So they wanted to make sure there's a sidewalk between the buildings. And it said, no offense to the lawyers, but that's kind of boilerplate. They said, sidewalk on the westerly side of the property. Well, we put it on the plan between the buildings, like we asked at the meeting, which I read, and they asked for the sidewalk because they didn't know. I mean, I can't fault, they should have a transcript, but it's that kind of stuff. So with all the conditions that you've been put, we've met, but there's one in there that's kind of nebulous. It says, basically the engineer gets to review and see, and it's a very broad category. So you tend to get engineers who just go off on their own thing. Now, maybe Candace has a certain bent or something, but it tends to be coming outside the lines of what you approve. And what I'm trying to do is really to bring in what's here. This is a good plan. There's no variances. It met all your requirements. Stormwater people approved the DNR. Mr. Riley told me he's smarter than them. They didn't know what they're doing, but that's besides the fact. That literally said it to me. Anyway, that's kind of what I'm asking is, there is an obligation, of borough, very few obligations, but basically, the consent cooperate, and it says, and otherwise properly redevelop or respect thereto including, but not limited to expedited review of plans by borough professionals if necessary. First paragraph, really when you're on it, that's not happening, not at all. 2 years to get through a compliance review that they didn't even know what we're compliant to, is just wrong. It's 140 grand in engineering is what I've spent so far, between my engineers and reviews. Ridiculous. And 2 years for the bottom.
To make it clear, because I would love to fix this, we can't. That contract's between you and the borough council, right? So they're the ones who agreed to expedite the review. So not that I'm trying to.
I think
No, I'm just
it's
trying
less
to
of an
encourage the
issue of
process to move.
just listening. I think there's probably issues of interpretation.
Yeah.
Rather than just people just sitting on it and not doing anything.
If I could just ask, for our professionals at the table, seems like a message was delivered here today. Can I ask, was that message received?
Yes.
Thank you. That's helpful for me.
It'd be helpful if we could do this, I'm hoping 30 days through, but they've had this plan since November 28th. They spent 30 hours, she spent 30 hours, with her office, since she's been in this 30 hours reviewing. Before that was about 90 hours, a lot of review time. Seems like a lot of generated fees were not really that critical. Anyway, thank you for your time. I put it out there for you.
You're back here soon to get your final.
I do too.
Actually, he doesn't ever have to come back, but it would not require the attorney to just.
Perfect.
Or.
We hope to never see you again.
Workshop that a little bit.
Okay, so is there anybody else? I'm sorry, from public. Okay, seeing none, I'm gonna close the public comment and we're gonna go on to 15 Railroad Place.
I have some other things, hold on. let me,
It's really just photographs,
Yeah.
because it's all talking.
Yeah, give me 1 second.
I used to some nights.
Do I have the property right?
Yeah, 15 Railroad.
Yep, across from the train station. Basically, Jennifer Jeffress, had painted her house last year, year before, and the paint was peeling. And she looked more closely and decided that the clapboard was the problem, that there were issues with the existing wood siding that was causing the paint to peel. And she did not want to get into painting again and decided that she would rather spend the money to reclad the house in hardy board siding that on the lower part matched the exposure here, and then in the gable end had shingles. We recommend that all of the trim be kept at the top of the windows, that the trim around the windows is sort of larger than normal, and she very much wants to keep that larger than normal trim, and whether that means replacing that with some hardy cement board product or their standard, which I think is a little bit smaller than what they have, wants to keep the corner boards. And while it's sad to see all the wood siding go, theoretically, the house will look the same when they're all done. And I have to say, it's unfortunate that we canceled several meetings so that they have been waiting a long time to get this approved. And it's not even technically something that HPC, I mean, you could call it repair, but I know that the zoning officer often says he really wants HPC's sign off on this because it is such a major repair to the house. So we recommend approval.
Questions?
But are sad.
No question. That's one of my favorite houses in the borough. Every time I go for my haircut, I take a picture of that porch. You have to see that porch.
Yeah, with the little trim pieces, that keep all
And
those.
every piece of furniture, the swing, the plantings, it's just absolutely gorgeous. But the comment I want to make is, because I'm an architect who builds, and I've actually put up clapboard on my own house addition years ago. I'm a stickler for when siding is replaced with the fiber cement, that the clapboards align
Mhm.
with the tops and the bottoms of windows. So for example, you don't get the slivers.
Yeah.
Now, the problem is some of these outfits now, they don't vary the clapboard spacing. Like you don't realize it, but it's like 4 1/16, 4 1/8, 4 3/32. They make it so it lines up at the top and the bottom. So basically, the window is 13 clapboards high, like brick. But you would never
Kind
cut
of
brick.
like a storyboard, right?
Yeah.
And then you can
So
angle it.
this is getting detailed, but I think it matters. That's what makes Hopewell Borough, the great houses that we have here. They did that back then. And they did that all before computers. They were craftsmen who cared. So I don't know if we can write that in. And a lot of owners don't even know, they go, oh, I never even realized that. And then it's too late.
She's certainly pretty aware of what's going on. She said, I don't want a 3.5 inch trim. I want a 4-inch trim
Right.
on my window because that's what I have, which is slightly oversized to what you would normally expect.
And I feel,
And I think that's fine to write it in. I know.
It's a
that-
recommendation from the Historic Preservation Commission.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't say it. And you can write it in, that's fine.
because if you don't say it, you don't get it.
I mean,
It's just like, oh, I didn't know, and it's not a money thing.
Yeah.
It's a. Should've.
it's I think that's great. If you want to say like, we'll just amend your recommendation to
Yeah.
them to
Include- Matching the
for, yeah.
roll siding on the top and the bottom.
With that, is there a motion to,
I'll
approve?
motion.
Okay, second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, none. Okay, great. And now we have 66.
Yeah. So 66 West Broad is the house that was falling down, the porch that's coming off, purchased by Todd Hawthorne. And we reviewed this in February for the porch only. recommended approval, you approved it. It turned out they were planning to replace every single window in the building, and theoretically, you don't need a building permit to replace windows. However, sometime in April went by and noticed that all of the second floor windows had been reframed to be, 8 inches shorter than had been there originally. So if you look at the image on the right, you can see that drop on the head height. I don't know how it happened. I had arguments with the owner, with the contractor, who said, oh no, we're doing it perfectly. I checked with the architect's drawings. They said, these are correct within plus or minus 2 inches either side. And nobody went out and actually measured the windows. And I had so many conversations. They said, no, they're perfect. And finally, they acknowledged, last month that, oh yeah, they had to do all this work to reframe all the openings to make them smaller to fit the windows that they had ordered that were the correct size. So we had an HPC meeting to talk about this, where they did acknowledge that, yes, they were the wrong size. They didn't know what size they were. If somewhere in there, they'd gone and counted clapboards and said, well, they're this big. So they decided that, in fact, the upper windows are slightly smaller than the lower windows by 4 inches, but not by 9 inches, which is what the drop in the head height had been. I had a lot of problem with their architect, who was drawing elevations and didn't show them correctly. I don't know if you got the elevations there. I had to send one whole set back because like the mullions weren't in the middle of the windows.
I may not. I'll pull up.
It's all right. So they finally sent me something that had, the bottom windows were 65 and the top ones were like 62 or something. So they at least had something, but they didn't have any of the old windows left, so they don't really know how big they were. They were just counting the siding, which is approximately 4 inches, but of course, as Paul just pointed out, they're not necessarily exactly. So this is the first floor that has 65 inches high, which is approximately right. I don't know if it's right or not, but they ordered. And then if you can go to the second floor.
Keep going, you want elevations or?
No, just the next one down.
This?
No, this one.
Did I do this?
Yeah, so here's why they have 56 inches high instead of
62.
65 or 62 or whatever. So the new ones are 65 and like 60 something. I forget what they are, but they make more sense than what had been there before. So I brought back and I said, and then if you go to elevations, I got very annoyed because if you look at photographs, these windows are not sitting on the porch roof. There are 2 little vents up here. It pains me to see somebody who didn't take any care on doing this. So I am really firm with them saying, and you can see how low the windows are here when they may be the right size, but they're in the wrong place. So I still do not have an application. They wrote me this morning and said, where do I get the application? I think they have everything correct now. The plans showed that they had added a window at the bottom of the stairs on the first floor, which they're not doing. That architect just threw that in. In fact, it was a nice idea because there are no windows on that side of the building, but they decided they didn't want to do that. So they're ordering all new windows, taking out all of the reframing, but I certainly would not recommend approval until we get that application. I'm being really strict because it has been such a chore.
I mean, I think it's fair to say that without an application, we're not gonna.
Yeah.
Give it.
We have nothing to approve.
Thank you for your free expertise that was handed out to this group.
I don't know whether you wanna say, well, we can recommend approval, but we're not gonna give the approval, issue a certificate until they get everything in that they're supposed to get in. I don't have any information about what the windows are.
Is there a fee? We don't have a fee for historic preservation, right?
No.
Okay.
No.
And there was a prior approval,
The prior approval was for just to replace the front porch that they took
but
off.
they must have had the form for that at that point, right?
Again, you're dealing with the owner.
Yeah, okay.
Was very not computer savvy, and a contractor who has come on board and, you know, and it was the contractor who asked for the application form was, I have sent them lists of what I want to see. I said, please send me everything in a package. So of course they dribble it in. So it's been a slog. But I think they have it right, and, you know, they've had a stop work order since April. So one would like to get them so that they could at least work on the interior.
Right.
But they can't have the certificate until they get all the stuff. And I'm happy just to receive it and tell you if you, I don't want to come back another meeting and do this all again.
So Christopher, is that something we could do, approve it based on the representations here? And if the application is to the satisfaction of the whole, of the planning?
Yeah, we can do an approval with
It's
condition
conditioned on
that
approval
they
of the
provide
application.
the missing
Paperwork.
application materials to the
And the window
satisfaction.
types, yeah.
Yeah, to the satisfaction of
Yeah.
the.
Historic preservation. Okay.
I mean, on a positive note, the best thing about this drawing is the word restoration. They just need to live up to that.
Yeah.
Well, I'll move it.
Okay, great, as we just stated, okay.
Just a substantive question, and I'm fully on board with the recommendation, honestly. Not regardless of this, but so some of the windows, like the one that was, and apologies, I don't think I physically can go back to the other slide. But the one that was reframed, ultimately the solution there is a different window?
No,
It's
they're
like-
taking, again, they bought all the windows, they reframed all the windows.
Right.
And all the pictures that they sent me had, building paper hanging over the top. And that one image was the only one where you could see the dropped framing. So they have to take out all of that framing.
Okay, that's my question. So the recommendation is to correct that with a correct size window.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
That's,
And we'll do it by counting clockworks or whatever from the original.
And he didn't even count them correctly, so.
So there's a motion, is there a second?
I'm happy to second.
Okay, and all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, none?
oppose.
Okay.
You know what? Do you really oppose? I oppose.
I wanna see the
This is-
application before I do
Yeah.
any
This is so
we're
bad.
jumping through, a little bit of a hoop here.
You're too nice.
The motion has passed, so.
Well, yeah, the motion's
These
passed.
mean guys, we'll
Yeah.
leave it in your hands.
We're being too nice.
To the satisfaction of the.
Okay, I will let them know that it is not been approved.
Nope.
And,
So you-
that several people
Receive the
against it,
paperwork.
And
Yeah.
we need the paperwork that has been requested.
Yes, and it's to your satisfaction, to the.
Ryan, are you able to zoom in on that or no?
On which thing?
Oh,
The PDF that's on the screen now?
Yeah, zoom in on the top window if you will.
From a technical perspective, yes,
Or
will actually
second-
work.
Second floor,
No,
zoom in on that window.
I'm,
Okay, zoom in, go one left, I'm sorry, yeah, even that one's fine. But anybody, a school kid in second grade would draw that window better. It's 4 equal rectangles.
Yeah.
Go down to the next level. I mean, there's just no caring.
Right.
It's just, like, they forgot to care.
I mean, they had the wrong number of windows on the front of the house, and, you know, it's just like, oh my God, so I sent back a marked up set of the elevations and said, fix all of these things.
Yes, but thank you so much.
You guys are gonna get it more.
So,
You're getting on
so
it.
we don't have an application.
No.
So that really doesn't even start the clock, because really you have to submit the application at least 14 days prior to the planning board. This is one not part of the development application.
Okay, so,
And, so it really isn't, a complete submission yet until we have an application.
okay, so the vote, I guess, is negated
No.
because.
Well, I don't know. How did we, I mean, was there a majority? I wasn't paying
Yes,
attention.
yeah.
Okay, so it was in fact
Yeah.
approved. Okay, so,
Subject to
but
the
conditionally approved on that.
conditionally approved.
Submitted.
Thank you.
So
Okay, next.
in the form that we submit, we have to make sure those conditions are
Yeah.
together.
And I'll share that with you.
All right, so we have a resolution. Everybody got the latest updated copy, presses. I think everyone's had a chance to review it because the amendments were literally.
Is it for discussion of the resolution, should the non-participating members leave?
I don't, I never really
No.
done that, because it's not a public hearing, you're not voting on anything, and only the people that voted for approval get to vote on the resolution.
We can listen.
So
Yeah.
it's really
Yeah,
just
we're gonna
this
go.
thing.
So we did change 3 words in total, I think, on what everyone got before, so there's not much of a change, but I think. Mr. Buda raised a question, which I don't really want him to raise now, because he's not voting on this,
Yeah.
or participating in this. But is there
The way
any-
it's written is technically correct.
Okay, then we're fine with that. So, all right, so everyone's had a chance to review it with the change of the 3 words. And,
And the only other change is because Peter's not here,
Right.
I've added your name to the signature line as the vice chair and removed the chairs.
right, and only the people who voted and only the people who voted yes, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So among that group of people, is there a motion to approve the resolution?
Can I ask one question first, which is, I am assuming that when this finally gets to building permit time, that the HPC will have to review it again for final approval on whatever happens, because undoubtedly there will be changes, and we have done that in the past. So I just wanted
If there are, so the planning board adopted the report from the historic preservation, incorporated the conditions that were outlined in the testimony. And to the extent that there is a substantial deviation, that deviation would be something that would probably be reviewed by the historic commission. But if there's no deviation,
it's exactly the same,
it's, if it's what.
so we wouldn't review it at all again, would we?
Right.
Yeah.
But it would be triggered if there was something that comes up in the field and they realize.
Yeah, they got approval
Live and
and
what
they have certain stuff, materials that were reviewed and approved by this board and a certificate of appropriateness in connection with it. And then the question is, if there's a material change, I mean, if there's something like they bump out, change, they want to create an additional, story on something or bump out, that actually would be a site plan. So they would come both before HPC and the planning board. So, depending on what happens, like I was explaining before, there's some field changes that could occur, like underground pipe, shifting it, that's not gonna come before the board. But if you have something substantial enough that's material, then that's something that would come before the board.
And again, because what we're looking at, what all of us were looking at, you guys were looking at was, drawings that were like tiny. So it's very hard to see everything, and where presumably we might have slightly larger drawing, there might be more detail on it. And I asked this partly because we ran into trouble on the lumberyard project where, I did not want to make any changes to what had been approved by the planning board, but it had not gone through the HPC at that point. And he felt that it had been approved exactly as he'd drawn it. And we did finally review it. We did request some changes. And it was better for that, but I just wanted to check on this.
Yeah, well, this one did incorporate historic review into the approval. The other one may not have, I don't recall, I think, Anthony can't that, but either way, if it wasn't part of it, then that's something that was outstanding and needed to be done and reviewed and approved by the planning board. They should have a certificate of appropriateness after that.
So that should be our process all the time, that
Yeah.
it comes in before we vote.
It's part of a development application, it should be with its site plan approval, because the site plan approval could have changes that may need some input from HPC, so it should be site plan and certificate right then and there. Yeah.
Okay, so of those who are eligible to vote, is there a motion to approve the resolution as written?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Oh, wait, what about Paul's? Oh, Christopher addressed it. It said
Yeah,
the-
it's
It says community story
Yeah.
for buildings 1 through 4. Yeah. Not 3 stories.
The way it's written is correct.
The way they're,
It has 3 floors that you can walk on,
right, but it's technically,
but 2.5 stories.
yes, exactly. So, okay, there's a motion by Bob. Okay, I'll second the motion, and then out of those of us, well, I guess we'll do a roll call of the eligible voters.
Mr. Donaldson,
Yes.
Ms. Coella,
Yes.
and Vice Chair Ms. Ferrera.
Yes.
So that means the one copy that with the tab, you can sign, and then you'll have the original, and then you could put that, make that part of the.
Why is it only 3 of us are approving the resolution? We are the only ones who voted in favor of it, who are here to.
Chair's not here and
And
Jack
Jack
is
is
not
not
here.
here. We
Yeah.
just needed a majority of those of us who are here tonight, who were eligible to vote. Okay,
So, everybody else either had a conflict or voted, or didn't vote. So that's.
right, the rest, everybody else here.
Yep.
That wraps that up, and then we have a public hearing on 58 Columbia Avenue. The applicant wants to come forward.
And I'm running to a different engagement.
Okay.
The 18 in here. All right, thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Subbing in, we have.
Take it.
Okay, so, Mr. Giuseppe.
Yes.
You have an application for variance. You wanna give us what you're looking for, I guess?
Yes, and before we even do that, this was an application that was previously with the board, back in the April meeting, which time the board, found that the notice was proper and took jurisdiction of the application. After some proofs were put on by the applicant, there was some discussion and, some plans needed to be provided. It was carried with the consent of the applicant, and the time for the board to render a decision is currently August 6th. So it runs through tomorrow. So I just want to keep that in mind for the board and the applicant as we proceed.
Notice for tonight's meeting is proper and complete.
Yes, because the application was originally carried without any further notice or publication requirements of the applicant, and we made that express notice at the time of the April meeting. So unless there's any other questions, just swear you in, and then you could kind of update the board and present your case. And certainly, swear the testimony you provide to the board tonight, the whole truth, nothing but the truth? Yes. All right, can you just state your name and spell your last for the record?
My name is Giuseppe, Uilseppi. Well, at the last meeting, we went over the numbers of how far I was over for the impervious coverage by adding the pool. And you guys had questions and, had a concern about the percentage of the increase. So the initial proposal was adding 10.1% additional impervious coverage to the current 39.32% that my lot was. I know on the original plan, there was a discrepancy on the numbers of what the current coverage was, because the engineer had didn't include or included the right of way and the sidewalk on there. So on the current application that I've submitted, it has the correct numbers subtracting out the 800 square feet. That is the roadway and sidewalk that he originally used as usable space. So I know you guys were fairly opposed to the original increase because I'm already over by 4.3% impervious coverage. So we came up with a few additional proposals. One is to, instead of putting concrete around the pool, to use composite decking, which is it's pervious coverage, not impervious coverage. That would subtract 434 square feet of the concrete that would initially was to be there, which would lower the increase to 5.98% increase. There would still be some required concrete for where the diving board would have to be because the pool complex that cannot be anchored to composite decking. In the packet of stuff that I submitted, I was doing some research on, because I know that even some of the members here last time said that it was kind of a gray area of how the impervious coverage is calculated for pools. So I couldn't find any numbers on our website, on the borough's website, as to how they calculated it, and it wasn't even really listed on there that it was impervious coverage. The only numbers that were on there were setbacks and fence requirements and that kind of stuff. So of surrounding jurisdictions, the only one that I was able to find actually listed on their website is Hillsborough.
So this is interesting, but really not relevant what Hillsborough's ordinance says. So I'm gonna ask our engineer if she would just give us the definition that applies in Hopewell Borough.
Okay.
And I just want to make a correction. I know on my memo, I said 35% is the maximum lot coverage. It's actually 30% for the R75P. That was
So it's approximately 10% over
right.
currently.
At the last meeting, I was told it was 35%. Are you saying that was an error last meeting?
The ordinance says 30%. I had a typo on my review memo that said 35%
Ordinance is what happened.
Okay,
Yes, sure.
I remember him saying 35% last. I initially thought it was 30%.
It is 30.
It is 30.
Right, and then Candace, if you could just give us the borough definition.
So the borough in their zoning ordinance lists all the definitions of different applications for the zone. For lot coverage, I'm just gonna read it by Burnham. The square footage or other area measurement by which all buildings and impervious surfaces cover a lot as measured in a horizontal plane to the limits of the impervious area. All surface parking areas and all required parking areas which are permitted to remain on surface shall be included in the computation of lot coverage. And so we have a definition for lot coverage, and that's the 30% of the lot area that is applicable in this case.
And a pool is not impervious.
A
I'm
pool
sorry,
is
pool is
impervious.
impervious. I say it wrong every time. A pool, if it was impervious,
We would have, you
Reflecting pool.
would have to have, you would. I understand there's a confusion with the pool and the water surface, but you know, the pool is a concrete encased or
Right.
fiberglass or whatever the case may be. So, I mean, there's no water seeping through into the ground. And in that case, that is, the very, even our SIS has a definition. If it doesn't infiltrate, it's
Yeah.
impervious.
so I think maybe there are places on the internet where they talk about pools being not considered impervious, but here we do consider it impervious. So that's just how we're gonna have to
Okay,
have.
I mean, I couldn't find that information. I mean, and kind of what she read didn't mention a pool, it just.
Well, because we know that it doesn't infiltrate, so by definition.
Okay.
Well, the definition is buildings and impervious surfaces.
Yep.
Where that comes from.
So it's impervious. Okay.
And also, just real quick, both of our professionals were previously sworn in connection with this application, so just briefly want to make sure that both are cognizant that they are still under oath.
Thank you.
Okay, so, then if I use the composite decking, it would be an increase of 554 square feet, which would increase my coverage by 5.98%. So really, the other information is not relevant since you consider it 100% pervious. My other proposal was that if you guys would grant me, considering it only 50% impervious coverage, that it would decrease the amount that I would be increasing it. But,
You mean if we would change our definition of what's impervious?
well, not necessarily change the definition of it, but
If the interpretation.
The interpretation of it, I mean-
Definition was.
Candace, can you tell everybody the, our zoning ordinance in terms of, the composite decking, in other words, decking, how it's different from obviously brick or concrete, is the space between the decking is is 3/7 of an inch, right? So water can go through. but different towns look at that differently. Can you refresh us how we look
Can
at
I say
it?
something real quick on that?
Mhm.
I built my house here in the borough, well, completely renovated it in 2012, and we went through that with the impervious coverage then. I have a 10 by 20 raised composite deck on there, and through meeting with the borough engineer at that time, they told me that raised decking.
Yeah, I just wanna-
composite decking is not.
Yeah, we're-
I just wanna make sure, is
Oh,
that
okay.
correct?
So, it's been an interpretation in the borough, and every town interprets it differently.
Right.
So,
We currently interpret it as pervious.
in a previous application by this applicant in front of this board, the deck was not, counted into the impervious because there was a, it was raised about 6.5 feet from the ground.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And also, there was testimony that they were gonna install gravel beneath it.
Okay,
So
So under
does
those
that true here?
conditions, we would not consider it.
that was the, opinion, that was interpretation of the board at one of a previous applications.
Well, we'll stick with that, obviously, because
stick
we've
with
already given you that, but future reference, maybe we should, review of our statutes, make very clear. what
Yeah, I-
decking-
At the previous application, Dennis used to look at decks as pervious if there was space between the slabs, the water could drip through, there was gravel underneath.
Right.
I know composite decking, they
Oh, it
flush it.
touches, right, so it has to be not touching.
Right.
right.
Well, composite decking, it has like a 1/4 inch gap in between. It's not buttered right up
Okay.
each other.
And is this, off the ground or is it,
Well, I mean, it will follow, obviously the pitch of the property from the original thing, from where the pool starts to where it ends is about a 2 foot pitch. So it would be about 6 inches off the ground at one end and about 2 feet off the ground at the lower end of the property.
is that dangerous?
Anything under 30 inches does not require
I know,
railing.
I'm just saying, is that 3 feet around the pool with people running around? I'm just asking.
Okay. Why don't we finish and then?
Yes.
Bye.
All right. And that was really all that I had was, changing it to composite decking. Obviously, you said that it's 100% pervious, so if that would increase it by 554 square feet, which is the surface of the pool and the required pad for the diving board. So it would raise it from 39.32% to, just above, 35% or 45%.
45.
Do you agree with that, Candace?
Yeah, so I mean, with taking the composite decking out of the calculation, the increase is as stated. Now, they've, submitted a table, of revised calculations based on this, but they did not submit any revised plans. So we're only going off of this and the sketch or the diagram that they presented for revision.
All the numbers from the impervious coverage that are on the current thing are what were off of the original plan.
So you propose, some retention idea,
Yeah, based off of the calculation that the engineer told me last time is you have to offset 3 inches of rain in an hour, which ended up being 1.87 gallons of water per square foot of impervious coverage. So the new proposal with composite decking would require with the 576 square feet would be 1,077 gallons of water that would need to be offset to offset the new impervious coverage of the pool and the concrete.
so
pad.
they collect whatever runs off, is what you're
Yes, I
So-
think the square footage of my garage is, the roof area is roughly 1,000 square feet.
saying. Right.
Which could produce, in an hour, if we got 3 inches of rain in an hour, that 1,000 square feet could hold, it's like it could produce like 1,800 gallons of water on that roof. And the system that I have designed could contain 1,375 gallons
So
of
does
that
that,
water.
Does that infiltrate the water or does it merely collect it?
What do you mean?
Does that allow the water to permeate into?
No, it would be a collection system to be used for gardening and refilling the pool, you know, the water evaporates, that's what it would be contained for.
Perhaps I can, if I can ask a follow-up question for a professional to maybe attempt to summarize. So it sounds like, and these are both positive things, revised the proposal to change the material around the deck from something that was very much impervious, good point, to something that may be grayer, but I think our understanding is that it would be, water could go through it at very least. And then some type of stormwater mitigation, with this tank system. Okay, I guess my question then for our professionals is, so I think there are two things here. One is, there's the bulk variance for coverage. And then we have a stormwater ordinance that's triggered on, I think, two different thresholds.
Right.
One, if you're at 1,000 square feet of new stuff, and I'd like to hear whether we're crossing that or not here.
Not the pervious surface.
Okay, but the disturbance,
But the disturbance was, that was based on their previous plan, a demonstration of the total, limited disturbance. So, that is something that, that's part of why we mentioned that we would need, to comply with the minor stormwater.
so let me try to rephrase that.
I think it was stated, just so we have the record clear, is it a bulk variance or a hardship variance?
Both.
They're both, but is it?
The applicant's requesting variances on the zoning, not on the, stormwater management. They've, are now proposing the cisterns, that's the treatment for that. But let me just, clarify, our ordinance for the minor stormwater requirements, is explicit on treatment, through infiltration.
Correct.
So, that's something for the board to consider as well.
I guess my question though is, so we need the variance for the coverage, but it sounds like because of disturbance, a minor this triggers the minor threshold for our stormwater ordinance.
Did you say there's anything over 1,000 square feet of disturbance?
Well, there's two different thresholds. One is 1,000 square feet of coverage, and it sounds like we're below that. We're even if the decking counted, we're in the 900, so it's less than 1,000. The second thing that would trigger it though is disturbance, like moving dirt around. Right?
Right.
The same way I got it.
Right, so, and,
It said 27,500 and
Right.
2,500 is the threshold.
Yeah.
So I guess my question is, does this proposed system comply, and what would the process be if we could do it to look at a variance from the stormwater requirements if they're triggered?
Just ask the question real quick.
Well, let's just keep it real.
Okay.
Yeah, straightforward. You'll have plenty of time. I just want to make sure that we don't just keep going back and forth.
so the stormwater, portion of it, again, relates to the disturbance. So if, the board was gonna consider the cisterns in lieu of an infiltration type, system, that would be, outside of the stipulations of the ordinance and truly, a waiver or a variance that would be required for that.
Right.
There are some additional details that we should, get from the applicant with regard to the cisterns that maybe he can, discuss a little bit further because, are they gonna be outside or inside? If they're outside, are they gonna be heated so that they can be controlling stormwater in the winter? Is it an overflow system or just a capture system? And then, what are you doing with the water? And, storms happen all year round. So, is it truly a stormwater management measure or is it something that's gonna, more capture water and then for them to use? And then, again, it may be emptied and then available, there'll be available reserve for more stormwater through the year. So, those are kind of the questions that,
And we're
gonna
asking
ask
the
the
applicant, I guess, so if you want to answer those.
Well, I just had another question, real quick, on the number you said of the 2,500 square feet of disturbance. There's not gonna be 2,500 square feet of disturbance, I don't know. I mean, the pool is 544 square feet and they overdig by 3 feet. It's basically the 970 some square feet of disturbance that would have been the pool plus the 3 feet of concrete around it. They
Right.
really don't.
Well, so there's that, there's the, equipment pad that you needed.
The
there
equipment
was-
pad, they said we could actually also use, as I put on the plan, we could build a small composite deck instead of putting a concrete.
Well, since I raised it, I got off the plan, on the Schmidt
Right.
plan cites 27,500 as the disturbance number. That's right.
Right,
On our-
that's
yes,
on-
yeah, yeah, like I said, a lot of the numbers that he initially put on that were wrong. I don't know. The whole square footage of the back property between the garage and the 3 property lines, it's only 20, it's 50 by 58, so it's.
Right. So I
Maybe
think
he
that's
maybe he
originally,
just originally calculated that the entire area back there is gonna be disturbed, but they're basically gonna dig the 1,000 square feet where the pool and the overdig and the rest of the dirt that's not needed is gonna be trucked out.
so I think it's a little different, different plan than we initially had reviewed, because at that time, there was a lot more grading in the back. You were gonna be
Yeah, and I was-
putting that in,
as I-
and there's all
As I
grading,
didn't mention before.
Right.
if
there's
we-
walls.
Before, if we use concrete, obviously concrete has to sit on something, so there would be a lot of grading in the retaining wall. If we do the, after meeting with the pool company, if doing the composite decking, it can pretty much keep the original grade of the property. Because the deck can be elevated, will be elevated off the ground and will not require earth under it like concrete would, except for in the area where the diving board is, so it wouldn't require changing the grade of the property nearly as significantly as it would have had we put the concrete there, because like I said, obviously, they have to, the property drops 2 feet over the 34 feet of the pool, so they'd have to, build that up and taper it off. That's where on the original plan, the retaining wall was in, but with the decking, there's no retaining walls needed.
But I'll just say, that makes sense to me, it's
So that's
hard to
your
know, I
testimony
suppose.
is that the plan is not correct, and you're now giving us oral testimony to correct that. Is that how we should look at that?
For the disturbance area?
Yeah.
Yeah, I honestly, I don't even remember seeing that number on the plan, but if you guys say it was on there, and
Well, let's look at the plan.
Right here.
okay, yeah,
Does that include like trucks, and when I say disturbance, like everything that it takes to make this happen? Is that right, or?
my interpretation of disturbance was where the area that they're digging is, but I'm not an engineer to.
Right, so typically it would be, well, at the time, they were gonna regrade the whole back. And so, the whole area was included. There is a construction access that they're proposing. I'd like a little bit more about that,
Well,
as well, because,
I know
it's very limited
One
area.
of the questions you guys had, there's only 7 feet between the garage and the car. My brother owns the property directly behind us, and the property next to that, I own. So with, it's a rental property, so access between those 2 properties to the backyard is not an issue. And my brother came with me at the last meeting, he was unavailable tonight, but I'm 58, 63, or 61 East Broad Street, directly behind me, my brother owns, and I am partial owner in 63 East Broad Street, which is the property next to it, and there's 30 or 40 feet in between the 2 properties to gain access to the construction site.
Okay, I do recall that testimony of your brother. Go ahead.
Is it conceivable, again, we're just hearing oral testimony about the change of plans, and again, I'm not convinced yet, but those are positive changes that you made, I'll say I appreciate.
That's all I can try and do.
Is it conceivable, James, that with what you're hearing about the changed plan back there, that the disturbance could be shown at some point if it was calculated to be less than the threshold? Is that crazy? I mean, is it possible?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's plausible for the redesign and especially, now that if they're not gonna be doing the
Okay.
coping around outside, but, so that means that there'll now be construction access from the rear. I'm not really clear on how that would, go through, with your trucks coming through the rear side of the property. You'd have to probably put in a construction pad or, something along that lines as well.
Pool company said they have these big rubber mats that they put down to run the
Okay,
excavators
okay.
and the
Yeah, I'm familiar with that. So I mean, it's conceivable that would go under the minor. Or
It would fall
stormwater,
under.
beneath your threshold for the minor stormwater.
So.
You know, again, we have plans, you know, we're discussing this
Yeah,
now.
yes. Understood.
So
Thank you.
tell me if I have done math, right, and Allison used to be a math teacher, so she can correct me on percentages. Yes, it's a big deal these days, percentages. Our ordinance says 30%. You were at 39% already, 39.3%.
Right.
If we judge it from the 39.3%, that's a 12% increase to get to 45%. But going from 30%, which is the zoning, it's a 50% increase. Am I correct? 50%, 30% to 45%.
Allison is not.
Am I, and we are correct, we have verification. So.
You count it as the subtract 45, 30 from 45, or do we count it?
No, I agree, using the context.
Well, so that's also in the context of, you know, the overage on the existing impervious, you know, that's also a consideration too, if you. Cause the existing, 30% of the lot area is, 2902.5.
So I remember last time, I think the chair suggested that one, not easy, but one possible way to avoid this whole problem for you is to remove the garage, right? Because it's gonna be hard for you to overcome the negative criteria problem.
I understand that, but I'm not gonna rip down a $100,000 garage.
So the lot is overburdened now.
Right.
Not your fault, that's.
I understand, that's the way I want it.
Right.
I kept, when I rebuilt the house, I kept in the exact same footprint I worked with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it is overburdened and you're asking for a substantial increase in the coverage. Which almost by definition means that it can't be granted without detriment to the zoning plan, because the zoning plan is to create safe and absorbent properties to protect us from the floods that we're having right now, right? That's literally what the ordinance exists for. So, I mean, I invite you to give us like your positive and negative criteria, but you have a high burden to meet the negative.
But what is for the residential, commercial? What is the impervious coverage for the residential, commercial zoning in the borough?
I mean,
Well, it changes based off, there's different zoning districts.
Yeah.
So the zoning district that you are in, impervious, the maximum impervious you could have in that lot is 30%.
I understand that, but like, the backside of my lot is commercial residential, my side of the block is.
So I believe, and the professionals can confirm this, but if you, it actually then changes based on use. So if you actually have a single family home in the RP zone, you use the RP 75 bulk requirements, I believe. It would be the same.
But commercial has, if you're getting the, commercial has less percentage, generally speaking, than residential.
Less allowable,
I
or,
mean, you can confirm, I don't want to give you a number,
It's 60% floor area and 30%.
something like that, yeah. I know, I'm gonna do the bike shop, I would shop this, it is lower percentage.
yeah, I mean, I look at the entire, you know, corner of our lot where the
Yeah.
bike shop and the
Right.
repair shop is, and the two lots that are for that the electrical company own. They're all like 75% coverage.
Right.
I'm just curious as to what the requirement is for that zoning versus the just plain residential where the backside of block 30 is.
Well, it's irrelevant because you're using it as a residential lot.
I understand, I'm just curious as to what
Why?
the difference,
Yeah, you're interested in why, like, why is it?
why would, because, you know, ever since we had the last meeting, I looked around like my block and it's like the electrical company that has two lots, I don't know the exact lot numbers, but they're right next to my brother's property. They're like 75% covered with either a roof or asphalt parking lot.
Sure.
So,
But if they came in and asked us to expand their impervious coverage tomorrow, they would have a very hard time getting.
I understand that, yeah.
I would like to find out the answer to that as well, about why it's different. I mean, but take a development like Hamilton 57.
Yeah, I've seen that, they're
That's a high-
allowed 75%
But
impervious.
understand, that's why that property is gonna have the most incredible piping system. Or like New York City, with 100% coverage, right? What do? They have giant pipes to get rid of all that water.
Where's the water, I mean,
So,
isn't, when we met last time, your guys' proposal was to keep the water out of the storm system and get it back into the ground.
Sure.
How at 75% for that Hopewell 57, if they're containing and putting large pipes, it's gonna go into our stormwater system, correct?
So So just so you understand, because it does seem like, why are we picking on you?
No, I understand. Look,
57.
I've lived in this town my entire,
Right.
my family's been here since the 1920.
Right,
Like,
so just to make it clear, that's a totally different kind of application with different standards and different rules, so we're only gonna apply the residential standards to you. And it's a reasonable question to ask why other things are different,
Yeah,
but it's irrelevant to tonight.
No, I understand that's irrelevant, I'm curious that it's like a lot that's on my same block that basically backs up to my backyard can have 75% coverage and with all asphalt, and I know that the impervious, you guys consider a pool 100% impervious coverage, but you know, it's gonna hold, I know the water's not gonna go back into the ground, but it's gonna hold it and it's eventually gonna evaporate and go back into the atmosphere, like whatever rains into it. So I mean, that's the only reason I gave that other information. I wasn't trying to say we have to do what Hillsborough does or we have to do what.
Yeah.
I was just trying to make a point that it's kind of a gray area as to what. How
But it's not a
people-
gray area in our ordinance, and we're gonna treat everybody else's pool application as impervious coverage as well.
Which we had one recently, and I believe that a similar, well, I believe the situation was that the pool itself didn't go over the coverage, but the deck did, and they ultimately changed the material to avoid. If I have this right?
Yes.
They used a pervious material, for the decking, which is not dissimilar from what you're proposing. However, they were already existing, and that, it was only the decking that went over rather than the pool itself.
So, I mean, you're free to give us your testimony about the positive and negative criteria, that's actually required for you to get a variance.
I don't know what you mean by like.
So, part of what you have to do to get a variance is to demonstrate to the board that you're changing the rules is not going to negatively impact the neighborhood or the intent and purpose of the zoning ordinance. And that it will in fact have a positive. So those are two separate things, if you have that straight.
So if you look at my review memo, I have a description of what they are, and what you would have to provide testimony on.
Page 3, I mean, number 3.
And so the positive criteria is that, you're gonna provide testimony or proofs. Yep.
That it's exceptional and
That, you know, it really speaks to the lot's physical attributes. So in other words, the lot is undersized or it's shallow or it's very narrow or it has some sort of special physical feature that prohibits you from being able to satisfy the bulk requirement. And the negative criteria shows that you could, if you deviate from the ordinance, that variance will not substantially impair what we call the zone plan or adjoining property. So in other words, how would you mitigate that excessive impervious coverage, i.e. drainage, stormwater, things like that? For a C1 variance, which is what is on here, it's, you know, it's really trying to determine, this is already a residential lot. It's already developed, already has existing improvements. So you're really just looking at the proposed pool, and which is a permitted accessory use, but here we're adding that increase in lot coverage. And so the testimony is really, why do you need the pool? How is it configured? Are there alternative design so that can mitigate that impervious coverage and lessen the extent of the variance? So you're sort of just looking at the aspects of the pool and its overage on the coverage. Does that make sense? A little bit? No? Landers speak. So let's start with the
What
positive
specifically about your property
that makes it,
unavailing to do something without doing this?
so in other words, what is it about your property that prohibits you from installing the pool and meeting the requirements of the zone?
Well, I mean, clearly the coverage I already have is what's impeding That's literally the only reason I'm here is because if I didn't have excessive coverage and it fell under the minimum, I wouldn't need a variance, so I mean. That's really the thing that's inhibiting me from doing.
Right, so your lot is a standard size though, correct? It's not an undersized lot.
It is undersized.
It is, that's,
So that's
every lot
right
on the
there,
street is
that
under
gives
something.
you something to at least put forward.
I mean, I believe the standard is 85 feet wide, although my lot's 50 feet wide, so.
Well, the minimum required lot size in the R 75P is 13,500. The existing lot is 10,400.
So then you have
So it's an undersized lot.
a positive criteria.
Mhm.
But then you have the hard, the negative criteria to demonstrate that without harm to the intent and purpose of the zoning ordinance.
Does that automatically give a positive criterion? It is
No, I'm
undersized,
saying he's
but-
just,
and then
he's
it's,
given us one that we can consider.
it is something to consider, but it's also by reason of that exceptional condition. And here, I mean, we already have lot coverage in excess. And so if it was a matter of saying, look, I don't have any other structures, it's just a pool, which
I'm just saying.
I'm using it as a bad example
Exactly.
because couldn't even do that.
Yes.
But then if it was, I am in excess of lot coverage with nothing other than the pool because
Because
it's
that's
an undersized lot.
Yeah.
Then by reason of that condition, that's subject to your property, that you cannot comply with the lot coverage.
So by saying that if the
But-
lot was conforming,
Correct.
I would not, the pool would not put me in excess of, impervious coverage.
But I think it still would though. We're talking about, you get a normal size lot in the zone is 13.5, right?
So that's an additional 3,000 square feet.
Of which you get 30% coverage, so, I think you're already above that though. Yes, one of the, I mean, I think the 2 points of coverage
Right.
and floor area are to kind of create some uniformity, you know, what does the neighborhood expect, sizing and coverage, and one way to look at that is, well, if your lot was the normal size, was a little bigger, you know, you would kind of expect to have as many things as a lot that conformed, you know, you'd have a driveway and a garage, and generally speaking, so you maybe get a little bit more, some towns have, it's called proportional, you know, like if you're undersized, you get some delta between the two. We don't have that, but I can see, but I don't know that gets you all the way. You know, a conforming lot would get 30% of,
So that, and
13,500.
that number, for 30% of a conforming, minimum conforming lot is 4,050. Their existing coverage, on the site is 3,805.
Yes, and still be over.
Well, no, they would be
No,
under,
they would be under.
they would be under. If his lot was conforming and no
Well,
change in
existing.
coverage.
Yeah, exactly. That was what he had.
adding,
He's still over.
yeah.
Basically, he has the pool.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
576 square feet that the pool and the concrete pad for the diving board. That would put it at what to a conforming lot?
Yeah, the percentage of the. That's why we're kind of.
Sure.
But you'd be at 4636, which is, which is 34.3%.
What?
34.3.
So putting the pool with the composite decking would, on a conforming lot, would push me 4.3% over the 30%.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And this is just approximate because we're just
Yeah.
working with what has been provided to us. Just to try to help out and give you the numbers.
That's on the positives.
Mhm.
Sometimes we talk about mitigating factors, you know. That's not a good example, but, you know, if instead of a pool, we were building an elevator, external elevator, you know, to help someone aging in place, you know, there would be positive elements
Right.
of of the project that you could kind of point to that we would balance against the negatives. I don't, it's not for us to think, I'm just thinking, just an example of how one would kind of build positive pieces out of, why, variances are bending the rules, or essentially explaining why rules should be changed a bit on a case by case basis, and those types of elements tend to be part of the positive argument, and I use one very different just so that it's the.
I mean,
But I think that's one of the things that in our planner's memo, to kind of try to help us understand in the balancing of things, that there are things that are positive about this that you can point to that.
So the negative things you want me to mention is something that would, if I didn't get this done, that's the negative side of it you're saying, or?
No, unfortunately not. The negative is,
The negative refers to sort of the zone plan or, really
The reason we.
bylaws like the public good. So how would this advance the
How would
zone
it
plan
not
or the public
impair it?
good?
That's
And not
not
impair it.
imperative, so it sounds backwards.
Yeah, it sounds backwards, right?
and maybe just backing into, I think the two kind of reasons we have coverage, one is generally like, to have some parity in neighborhood understanding of, everyone's got a driveway, everyone's got a garage, and to kind of have them be, what does the neighborhood expect, a certain amount of coverage on a certain size lot. The other thing is the environmental piece of it, it's to not have as much impervious, and it's not like a magic, but there's negatives to that, and you have to balance them against the positives of doing what you're doing, and sometimes you propose something, that it's mitigated. Some of the negatives could be mitigated by things that you're doing, and,
By putting like the.
you've gone towards that, so that type of explanation is helpful too in understanding, the negative of having more coverage is supposed to have this environmental, but you can mitigate that, it doesn't automate, it's not like an automatic removing the negative, but it helps us to understand, so that's the other parts of balance of that, and, is that, I don't know if this is helpful, but those are the two kind of buckets of, I think, why this rule is in place, the environmental.
No, I
and
understand why it's in place.
Can I ask a question about, any of this setting a precedent for when everybody on the block wants to do a swimming pool and?
So, not
necessarily.
No.
Really, variances,
Yeah.
I think that's good to put on the record that a variance doesn't set a precedent for another situation, that's very different, but it's literally like, this is one time only on one lot.
But I think that there's a larger thing, kind of connects with what Allison is saying. This criteria in the town, we've sort of mentioned here about, the driveway and the house and the porch, and your house has a very nice porch, and it's trees, and that's all those things that make Hopewell. And Hopewell is not noted for swimming pools. There are some, and I know where they are, and I love swimming. But this wouldn't be a problem if it was on King's Path, right?
I understand.
Big acres.
For King's Path.
But I'm saying in the borough, and there are different parts of Hopewell, if you were on the end of Broad Street, where big properties are, yeah, right, no problem. But because we're in a denser area, that's where zoning really matters. I mean, it's not only is a pool, but pool comes with noise,
I was just gonna say,
you know?
Well, but
Noise.
I do want to clarify something though. Pools are permitted accessory.
They are.
So I would caution you with that line of reasoning.
And it's not seeking setback.
I'm just saying, right, but I'm saying that there's a character in the borough that it's just like, if somebody wanted to put up a 3-car garage, they can do it. They have the room, right? But it's not typical in the borough. It's a 1-car garage, 2 maybe, but you'd be hard pressed to find a 3-car garage unless you're on a big piece of property on Broad Street or,
So what I'm understanding is you're getting to the density.
Yeah,
It
how
kind
does-
of goes into
as a
lot
board.
coverage
Right.
concerns that. the
It's not
board
against,
trying to-
I'm just trying to say, I think of Hopewell as a quilt. And it has different parts, and how does it all fit together?
But if you look at where it was located, I mean, if you look where it's located, Paul, his neighbors are residential, but right behind him is
It's
all
all-
commercial.
I know.
So, I mean, that's.
I just had a tenant move out of my apartment building because of the noise from the auto burger that she moved out July 31st because the noise from next door So yeah, as he said, I mean,
I mean,
the entire backside of the block is all commercial, with the exception.
and it all has 75% density.
Maybe it's
So-
to rephrase, but Paul, I think what I heard though is particularly for undersized lot, there are certain things that you kind of need to have or that the neighborhood expects, a place to park, a garage. And there is in that balancing of what is needed, I suppose, and what is expected in a neighborhood. It's easier to make that balance for something that is, I'm not gonna say a pool's not important, but you know, things that are typical for the neighborhood that you don't have because you have an undersized lot. You know, I could imagine, like, if, you know, there wasn't a porch here. But, you know, you wanted to add a porch, everyone's got a porch, and it's kind of expected.
Yeah.
I can understand the balancing a little bit different there because it's expected, the neighborhood expects it, you see porches up and down. Not that it's not permitted, but it's less, custom, I mean, I think that's what I got from there.
Yeah, that's a good point. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
I mean, I don't really know what else to say. I mean, the main reason why I really want to put a pool in is, you know, I have 2 little kids. Trying to keep them off electronics in the summertime, it's like, you know, I'm sure
We all
Ryan could attest, it's like, you know, if we're not outside, you know, hanging out by the pool, like, they're gonna just sit there and wanna be on their electronics, and I see the detriment that does to our youth, and it's like, I see my daughter's 13, and it's like, all right, let's go outside and go for a bike ride, it's hot, instead, like, so she just sits in her room on her phone, and like, you know, I'm 49, you know, I didn't have a cell phone until I was 22 years old. And it's like, you know, my daughter, you know, she's home from school before I get home, so I need the cell phone if she misses the bus or something, so it's, you know, it's kind of essential with kids now to have a cell phone, but it's like, it's also a huge burden to parents to like try and regulate it, so I figure if we have the pool, it's, you know, the kids will be out there enjoying it, you know. All of our neighbors will be like, all right, great, we'll have, you know, we'll all be able, you know, I know everyone on our street, it's like, you know, I've lived on that same block for 49 years, so it, you know.
To be sure, the collection of the rainwater is beneficial, correct? It's
As
environmental.
anyone who's seen my house, my wife plants an exorbitant amount of plants in front of our house, and our water bills have gone through the roof, been watering, so I have already put 2 50-gallon rain barrels on my porch that capture the water off of my front downspouts, and we don't get enough rain for me to keep up with them with her watering the plants, so that's what they, you know, at least, you know, 5 maybe 6 months out of the year it would be used for that. Other times it could just be, the water could just be sprayed into the lawn to go back into the earth. I mean, I know winter times that, you know, okay, are they gonna freeze, but I can get heat blankets for them. I've already looked into, they have UV blankets you can put over them so that they're not growing algae and stuff, and like I said, in the summertime, planting, washing the car, refilling the pool, I mean, I don't know what else I could do. I mean, it won't be an eyesore for my neighbor's there's like 5.5 feet of property between the garage and my neighbor's fence, and the entire fence line is covered with arborvitaes that you can't even see through, so I know the tubs are white, but they would be covered with a UV blanket, which is like a light grayish material, so it wouldn't be an eyesore to anyone, and really no one can see the pool from the street, so would be able to see it from the street.
Well, let me ask this in, or at least frame it in a way that it goes back to the positive and negative criteria as it relates to the variance for lot coverage. From an engineering perspective, do we have what we need to determine that the proposal can mitigate and handle the excess stormwater runoff?
So what they've provided is the gallonage, calculated based on their impervious coverage. We don't have those calculations, but based on testimony, that's what, you know, they're providing with the storage on cisterns. The stormwater, like we discussed, may or may not apply in this application. So, but the mitigation on the stormwater it's typical. You collect runoff from roof areas in lieu of new impervious coverage, so.
Is it typical though, and that's, well, I think it's important to kind of parse out whether they had, you know, whether they had to do it, or
Right.
perhaps this is just I'll say bonus coverage here, but, or bonus, mitigation. But remember, there's like a couple of different things that stormwater mitigation is supposed to do. Would this handle, I mean, this would do a quantity, but it would.
So this would
treat
capture,
water.
yes, the way that they're calculating, they're capturing the storage requirement that is stipulated in the ordinance for, a minor development. So what they're doing is they're storing that amount of runoff in the cisterns.
But there's no requirement for water for quality or for.
Well, so that's what infiltration
Right.
is related to. It does not qualify for an infiltration type of measure.
It's a storage.
Right, and reuse,
Yeah.
and so, I mean, that is a positive BMB in, the DEP manual. For control and measure, so. But it's not explicitly set in the ordinance.
You finished?
Sorry, one more, the technical question, so the diagram that you did that shows the tanks, are they on the side?
It's not in my garage, the west.
Okay.
end.
And so that, I'm just kind of,
The garage is 24 by 40, it's got two 40-foot long gutters that,
got it, so this would go between the garage and like a neighboring property?
my neighbor's fence.
Alright, so my question is, are these things that would require, if they were to be in that place, are these things that are subject to a setback? Requirement?
Do they're hanging on the wall? Are they
No.
hanging on the wall? No, they're gonna,
I would get 4x6 lumber with cinder blocks
It's
under
pretty
it.
much like an air conditioning
Yeah,
unit.
yeah, I mean.
I don't know if
it
that-
takes some-
yeah, so it'd be similar to, utility. If they're gonna be putting any hard surface down, I mean, that's something we have to consider too.
There's one other comment. It was, I mean, you talked about your daughter, and not having kids and school, and use the block, but I do remind everybody here that we are 5 minutes away from the last remaining quarry in New Jersey. Again, because our houses are small, it's the reason why people generally don't have room for pools. And it's more of a community thing that you go, when there's a sportsman club, I think, that I've ever been to.
I know, I belong to
It's
the
all
Sarah
club.
Sportsman's Club for the first 18 years of my life, and
But I'm just saying that it's it's a tough thing to overcome with the lot coverage issue, and also I'm trying to really kind of come to grips of what is it that makes the town, what doesn't make the town, and if is it being forced? Is it too willful in the piece of property that we're given? I'm sorry your lots under
Yeah.
sized, but that's what we have. Yeah, that's what I want to say.
So if you're finished, I have to open the hearing to the public if there's anyone. Oh, we can discuss it after, but we're just gonna open it to the public. Anyone from the public have any they want to contribute? Seeing none, okay. So, board members,
Well, I think the issue is the mitigation aspect of this. I mean, so if there was no mitigation, it would be one thing. And with the mitigation, I mean, we're basically addressing that the theory of coverage is to address, certain storms, right? Certain levels of rainfall. The mitigation would capture that to a certain extent.
I think that captures half of the request for coverage. I mean, if the stormwater mitigation ordinance covered it entirely, we just wouldn't have a coverage requirement. We would say, pave the whole lot and do stormwater mitigation. I think that it's the element, that's one element that can be mitigated. I'm not sure if it fully is here, but it's a good step.
But it's not being introduced as a stormwater issue, right? So it's being introduced as bonus coverage as you.
No, my point though is that.
I understand.
okay, did we get an answer? I'm sorry, I might have misplaced this note. Candace, is there a setback issue with the retaining?
I don't believe, I mean, I guess you could apply it as similar to an air conditioning unit.
Which would not trigger? I just don't know.
I don't believe so.
Okay, if it doesn't, that's fine, it just.
Yeah, it does.
The generator.
Yeah, generators,
Okay.
yeah. 'cause
So
there's
maybe just what's the size of, maybe generally, how much space is between the garage and the property line? And then,
5.5 feet roughly. I can look exact number on the plan. If I can read the.
and then ballpark, how big the containers would be, I think.
So your survey, because the survey shows that it's 4 feet on the pool side and 3.99.
Containers are 40 by 48 by 54 inches high. They hold 275 gallons apiece.
So they would just, may not even
It'd be
fit.
right against the garage. I measured it, I already went and bought one and made sure it would fit there. That
But it takes up,
It's touching the
but
property.
it takes up most of
it's
it.
not gonna touch they're 4 feet and they're 40 inches wide. So, I mean, there'd be enough for my skinny self to squeeze between them, but
So if there was a rule that said it's required a setback of X feet, there wouldn't be X feet. We're not sure if there is a rule for this.
Right.
Okay.
Isn't it 15?
Accessory structures are 5, it's 5,
It's
No,
fine.
not soccer.
Side yard is 15.
5.
For primary.
For
For an
accessory structures.
Accessory gets closer.
Okay.
So I'm still very hung up on the,
I am.
the intent and purpose of the zoning ordinance, which is to minimize impervious cover because of storm. And that's something that can't be, this month, it's been very clear that it's an issue. That's something that just can't be overcome without radical change to, obviously, you don't wanna make, I mean, I'm not saying you should, I was just saying that the chair had suggested you could, right, but it's not something you wanna do. That just, it's not gonna pass for me, I mean, it's.
I agree. I agree the same way. I'm not convinced that the negative criteria.
Yeah, it's almost definitional to me, in terms of what the negative
I'll
criteria is.
just add, and I'm not necessarily suggesting this, but it is challenging this is not a simple thing to ask for. And I'm not suggesting that it would be magically convincing, to have an attorney or to have an engineer with this, now, with the argument or explain it. For me, I'm generally, I don't see the proofs that allow me to understand variance. It doesn't mean I couldn't. Also, though, I don't wanna suggest you go back and hire more people and spend more money if it's not gonna happen. And I don't know, but for me, I'm not seeing the proofs.
I would be,
And it's,
I would be hesitant to recommend that, because I feel like then we're promoting something that most, like, obviously, I know you're not trying to, but like. we don't wanna
everyone
say
should
come
hire
back.
attorneys all the time.
Yes, fully employed. But.
And planners, too.
Yeah, but, we have a lot of questions that we're not really clear on the answers of in terms of setback and whatnot, but beyond that, even if we had answers to that, I'm inclined to not have this. Unless anyone has
Why
anything
can't we
else.
walk and look at the place? We never are invited to look at any property.
Yeah.
You have access.
You have access, when they say that location.
I would like to see where the cisterns.
Well, it's too late to know, because we're gonna act.
So sometimes,
actually-
I do work with towns that, before they proceed in hearing, they will have a site walk or site meeting.
So some towns do that, but
Yeah.
we do have a requirement that.
When
you
they
have
sign the
access.
application, you have
Yes.
access, I mean, you
Every-
always call and get permission, you
Yes.
don't just show
Yeah,
up.
to be
Right.
clear, that means the town does, and we could arrange it. We should-
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's not like we can just wander on, but by applying to the town, you have said we have access, or,
Some,
some kind of an appointment or whatever to view it. Most of the time, we can view it in the street and it's not.
I want to go back to something that Peter had brought up, which was alternatives, and I just want to ask. Is there some reason that this needs to be an in-ground pool, why you couldn't just do an above ground?
well, above what's considered.
Yeah.
Which as well.
Yeah, but it would be smaller.
It would be smaller, but I feel that is less fitting to Hopewell than an in-ground pool. It's kind of
But
an
it,
eyesore.
but it also can go away. Maybe
Yeah.
our neighbor puts it up every summer and then takes it down in the fall.
really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess some of it does. Yeah, I mean, I'll fold up, it's little, uprights and.
And with the supplemental submission, the calculations that we were mentioning, right? So on page 2, where you start with this chart that says current specs. And I'm not gonna ask anything specific. I
Next
just,
at the top here.
yep, so all of these numbers and the percentages, these are all calculated by you?
No, these were calculated by the surveyor who did the survey.
Okay.
But when the engineer drew the pool on there, that's where he mixed up and got the higher percentages because he was including the street, the 20 foot of 800 square feet of, I believe it's 50 by 12 for the road, which is 600 square feet, and then the sidewalk that's another 200 square feet.
Okay.
So that's where he made the error on the initial plans.
And the next page, where same thing was I just wanna make sure that we're all clear on how we got to these numbers that you're proposing.
Following pages.
Yes,
Which
so both charts, additional accommodations for water collection, all of these numbers, I just wanna make sure, was these, done with your engineer? All right,
I mean,
we'll go chart by chart. Initial pool proposal,
yes,
total increase 7.3%.
the initial pool, no,
No, just go with me now. Who prepared it?
oh, here. If we read at the top, that was when I was proposing that maybe we consider it 50% impervious coverage.
No, it's not a
Just wanted
gotcha
to get it
question.
on the record.
I just want to get on the record as to who prepared it. That's all. It's not like I'm not trying to.
No,
Frick anybody else.
I did those numbers, it's relatively simple.
So composite decking proposal, total increase coverage 3.2%. That was you?
Yes,
Okay. And then I'll just do this all lump sum. So all the additional accommodations for water collection, that was you?
yes, I did
Okay.
all those calculations.
All right. I think it's also just helpful for when our engineer is just reviewing it, I want to make sure that if there's some discrepancies there, that she knows that somebody else didn't essentially put their.
Well, in the final, if there's a final product, we would request that the plans be updated with the numbers and signed sealed by professionals. So, I mean, that would be inherent.
And are you okay with those numbers that?
Well, I mean, if they can reflect, these numbers are fine for, for the calculations, but I still like to make sure it's on a signed sealed plan.
Because-
In the long run.
What I'm getting at is either way that it goes, that I wanna see what the number is, like, essentially, if it were to be granted, right? Not to say the board's gonna do anything, that if you're proposing a number and it's an increase of 10%, well, if we do those numbers and it turns out that it's more than that,
Yeah.
then it's all,
No, I
this is all
understand.
for naught. So, I just wanted to make sure that was clear. Conversely, if it were to be denied, you'd be doing yourself a disservice, right? If the board's looking at this and saying, oh my gosh, that was actually left.
Understood.
All right, I think we have a record, at this point, I'll take the hit and I'll make a motion to deny the application for failure to meet the negative and positive criteria. Okay. We'll do a roll call first. So a yes vote will be denying the application.
Mayor Kennedy,
Yes.
Mr. Buddha,
Yes.
Ms. Baxter,
Yes,
Mr. Donaldson,
Abstain.
Ms. Lyon,
yes,
Mr. Young,
No.
Ms. Colella,
Abstain.
and Ms. Bird.
Yes. Thank you, sorry, just.
It's glad that that pool doesn't fit with the town's agenda, but your Hopewell 57 monstrosity does.
Which I did not have a second. That would be nice. I think that's it for tonight's agenda.
Well, I just wanted to announce that this is my last meeting. So I just wanted,
You're like us?
but I do want to thank everybody. I'll still be on for the rest of the month, just closing out things, but everybody has been great. It's been great working with everybody. So thank you, everybody.
And you were great.
No problem.
Anything, so. We didn't adjourn.
Still have that.
We didn't adjourn yet.
Just,
She is our planning and zoning secretary who has been so responsive and very, let me say, the public who interacts with her constantly tell us how pleasant and responsive she is, so you're losing.
Thank you.
Person, yeah. So thank you, Susanna. With that, I think we're good.
Yes.
Is there a motion to adjourn? Oh, wait a minute.
No, I will move subject to a quick reminder, if anyone didn't read their emails, to go upstairs, maybe while I'm making some motions, you can go up and do so.
Yeah.
But with that, I'll move to end the meeting.
There's a second. Okay, great. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you.